So, make it official today because I have some people in the Dhamma hall here with me, but under proper restrictions, obviously still. Big Dhamma hall, only around 10 people, but I don't have to talk just in front of the camera, so. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So, this is my third talk here in the hall during the COVID crisis. And the first time with people in the hall. Before that I had to imagine the audience. So now it's getting a little bit more relaxed again. You can come out and use the opportunity where it's still quiet out there, and I don't know, many of you might not be able to go back to work yet, to use that time for your meditation. And from the very beginning I try to stress that it's obviously terrible for some people, that whole thing, and the whole crisis has affected a lot of people in a negative manner, and a lot of people are struggling. But also it brought home this sense of uncertainty, impermanence. We can feel so safe sometimes here in the West, and then just something like that happens and we wake up again to that fact how uncertain it is to have this body here, being dependent on clothing and food and shelter and medicine. And luckily Australia wasn't hit that hard, but in some other countries the amount of suffering they have to endure, and they will endure in the coming months and years because of that, because of this interconnectedness of this world that we have now, is going to be absolutely, it's going to be devastating for a lot of people and family. The lucky few, us in the developed countries, and the lucky monks actually living in Australia, for me the COVID crisis is the best thing that ever happened to the monastery. It's completely quiet. I'm used to not going out. I love not going out. Don't have to interact with anybody. Ajahn Brahm could stay in the monastery for the longest time, in probably, I don't know, since his fifth Vassa, or I don't know one. So it's for the monks a very, very rare opportunity. But obviously they have dedicated their lives to living in a form of voluntary isolation. So the stress and the suffering that people experience by not being able to do what they usually do didn't apply in the monastery. And kindly, we were still fed, people were still coming, and more people even wanted to come than we allowed in. So we never experienced hunger or not being able to go to the doctors. Or we didn't experience any hardship in that situation in the monastery, which is, very lucky, and thank you very much. And we're the lucky few, but I mentioned that before, that a lot of people here in Australia, it's the same thing for them. Even if they don't have their jobs and the income, but the reality is you still have clothes, you still have shelter, you still have food in the fridge. So that what we call hardship these days is just ridiculous. There's people in South Africa, I heard something, they were living there somewhere in this shack with 5 people. And then they get beaten when they go outside, actually, by the police because of social distancing. But they are usually day-to-day workers. They need to get out there to make some money, otherwise they can't even eat. So yeah, that is a different form of hardship, obviously. This is where the physical suffering sets in, where it's getting too hot, too cold, very uncomfortable, insects, hunger, being cramped together with other people. So I just try to remember that from time to time to put things into perspective. This what we call a difficult time around the world. It happens on completely different scales. And now look at us. We're in that lucky position that you can use that time now to come and have a retreat for yourself. Look after your mind. And I mean, the biggest hardship in the West that for people was either being alone, not being able to interact, or having to be with their families and with their children, and not being able to get out or send them to school or anywhere, just going completely crazy. You just see how the suffering just being with each other. I mean, I have that suffering every day in the monastery, being with people you don't necessarily want to be with, some of them. And you find out actually that is, wow, it's in the family, it's the same, and you can even love somebody, but too much of those interactions is just suffering again. So now you are able to get out here already, very nice, and have some time for yourself. And then the most horrible thing that can happen is we go out there and be with ourselves and we cannot stand ourselves. We find it hard being with ourselves. That obviously then is the next realization of this whole mess of suffering, isn't it? Just being in a place without distraction and just having to endure this mind and these feelings and these thought processes, and we find it's not that pleasant. It can be unpleasant in itself already again. So where do we run to? And I hope you treat yourself very, very nicely here. Don't expect too much, that now is the time and now I have to get into deep meditation or whatnot. Now I should waken up and see how much suffering is there in the world and how uncertain it is. And just try to force your mind into some sort of corner again. Now is the time for seeing things clearer and clearer and clearer. But there always has to be a lot of patience and a lot of kindness, and also you're in some sort of sense deprivation always on the retreat, you have to remember. And that is, it's not easy. It's not a decision that we make in the mind. It has nothing to do with willpower or strongness, because there's tendencies that we have for the eye wanting to see beautiful things, the ear wanting to hear beautiful sounds, and the body wanting to feel beautiful feelings, the nose wanting to smell nice scents. And the whole five sense basis, this tendency rolling on, is not stopping because now we're on a retreat or now there is a coronavirus and we have to stay alone. Huh? So we get in touch with that suffering a little bit, having a body, having this whole mechanism rolling, these tendencies rolling and searching and looking, and it starts when we wake up, mind looking for happiness. The first cup of tea, and then I don't know, having a shower, doing this, doing that, and this constant rolling on of this tendencies and thoughts, trying to find some happiness always out there. And that doesn't change when we go on a retreat. That doesn't change for people when they put on their robes and go join the monastery. That's why the first few years in the monastery can be particularly hard. Some people think, oh, now you're ordained, you must be so happy. No, bullshit, actually. It's the opposite. You're ordained, and when the inspiration runs out a little bit, this is going to be the hardest time in your life. Because these tendencies are rolling on, if you want it or not. All that you have been used to in the world, or most of it, you can't have anymore. And that creates this little vacuums, this little point of negative, how can I call it? A vacuum is the best. It sucks your happiness. Sucks the happiness that you got out of the five sense pleasures. And you get aware that this what we call happiness is just based on this constantly feeding this wanting in ourselves. And when that cannot be fed the same way or the way we used to, we experience suffering. And this is the suffering that people in the West with the coronavirus experience now. You cannot go out and do the things you want to do. Whatever it is, your hobbies, your sports, your distractions that you have out there. And that is this vacuum sucking the happiness out of your life, and it makes us angry. That's what's happening. You either get sad or you get angry. It is a reaction we have. And in the baby, obviously, is very unrestrained. You see it sort of gets something to eat and it's sort of yum, 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 and then it wants something else, and then it cries. And then there's a little distraction, and biddly with I don't know, with a little puppet or whatnot, distracted again, and it's sort of, and then it can be happy again. Or this little sense stimulus you have to add to make it comfortable. And that is apart from bodily pain. There's apart from being as a baby that they have to be cleaned and get uncomfortable if not, and fed and warm and whatnot. This is the suffering already there, wanting this, needing closeness, needing distractions, needing stimulus. So that is the suffering that we are stuck with as coming here into that world as human beings already. And realizing that is, we have to realize being in a situation where you put yourself in a retreat now with even less sensual stimulus, you have to be especially kind to yourself, and you have to, the few sensual pleasures that you have here, make the most of it. Really enjoy your tea, really enjoy your hot shower, really enjoy your, if you brought a book or if you read some Dhamma or whatever it is. It's very important. Very important that your The mind is not just starving for happiness here. Because if the mind is starving for happiness, it's what happens is that we try to sit down for the meditation and it's so uncomfortable. The mind starts in such an uncomfortable place already, and then it's just looking here and there and everywhere, and the thoughts are just, they don't want to stop. It's just, it's too much suffering. So you need a certain amount of happiness before you even sit down. Need that kindness when you sit down already. There's nobody here that has to achieve something. There's nobody here, my dear mind, to torture you. It's just, wow, look, we can just sit down, don't have to do anything. Never use shoulds. Shouldn't be like that. I shouldn't want. I shouldn't think. It's always, I don't have to know. But if it happens, all right. Always use that non-self aspect in your meditation. You're not in control. None of us is in control of that business there. There's thoughts coming, feelings coming, going. Coming, going, coming, going. The only thing to be aware enough, see, please don't add to that suffering that is going on already. Like I said, being a human being. I mean, the Christians, they say it's, God created everything in His image, and it's, look, it's so beautiful, and look at the flowers, and praise the Lord that we are here and whatnot, you know. In Buddhism, that's why they call it negative. It's the opposite. The slightest bit of existence is like shit under your fingernail. That's what the Buddha said. The slightest bit of existence. And he is talking about the absolute highest bliss realms that we cannot even imagine. And it's still like shit under your fingernail. And you try to rub your nose and you will find it's going to stink. It still stinks. to the last moment of this being, awareness. It's suffering. So that is a completely different perspective, isn't it? So being aware of that, what do we do? Do we get negative? It's just everything is just horrible anyway. Nothing is worth anything anyway. You can try that, but you just become a very miserable, angry person if you do that. This is not the way out. The trick was to see the mind is an addict. It's addicted to the sensual pleasures. We cannot just say, stop that now. It's like trying to stop a passing train and holding on to the rail and at the stop of on the train station, and you try to stop a passing train by holding out your hand and try to grab something on that running train. That is a good simile. That is how powerful these tendencies are. The little thought of, no, I'm so wise, I'm a Buddhist, I know sensual pleasures is all suffering actually, so I stop craving. Doesn't help at all. It's basically just this tiny little thought in this big stream of tendencies that is twirling along. So knowing that, you start not adding unnecessarily suffering in your own mind. You see, I'm an addict. Yeah, addicted to sensual pleasures. But the way in Buddhism was never to say no to sensual pleasures. Never was. We restrain the mind from the unwholesome stuff. That's what we started. What the 5 precepts are for. we refrain from our happiness affecting other people's happiness. And that gives us a foundation of feeling at least safe. We don't. The fear level drops in the mind. We don't expect to be cheated upon because we don't cheat for a long time. We don't expect to be hurt because we don't hurt for a long time. And this gives us at least a chance even to sit down and let something happen. Because if you start with fear from the very beginning, you're never going to get rid of the controller. It's never going to be let go. It's one willpower trying to challenge the next ego thought coming up in your mind. This letting go business happens because there's a certain amount of happiness in the mind already when you start in your meditation. As if you watch something interesting on television or what. If you watch your mind, you're not going to think that much. If you're really captivated by what is going on, you don't need to think so much. You hardly think at all. You're just completely in what is going on. And why? Because the mind is happy where it is. It's interested in what is going on. So how do I get my mind interested in doing nothing? And not by forcing it anywhere. It's always because you have a certain, you bring when you sit down, you always remind yourself, my dear mind, now is the time where you don't have to do anything. If you still need to do something, do it. Think if you want. Feel whatever you want. Listen to whatever sound in the hall. Smell whatever fart is coming across from your neighbor. Whatever is happening there, please always check your attitude. That is the most important thing. If you find you get negative in your meditation, never sit and force yourself to continue. Just get up quietly, walk a few meters, have a cup of tea. Say, okay, mind, you're agitated, something is not quite right. Always help out what is going on, because you know, we're addicted, we're junkies. We're basically suffering moment to moment from not getting what we want and getting what we don't want. This is our situation as human beings. So we don't add to that if we can. And that is the wisdom that we can bring to the table as Buddhists. We see, yes, there is suffering. Being born is suffering. Old age, sickness and death is suffering, yes. 5 khandhas is suffering, yes. But what do I add to that suffering that is already there? Do I reduce the suffering that is gonna develop through my thoughts and actions in the future, or am I on a path that is reducing the suffering for me in the future? And you don't reduce the suffering to suffering more. This complete nonsense of torturing to get rid of something and to kill the defilements. And I heard a lot of that stuff as a young monk. And for me, it's such a nonsense, you know, and there's such aggressiveness behind it, and it's such a lack of understanding how the mind works. So please use your time here kindly, and you're sense deprived. So if you have a chance, do something that you still enjoy in that environment. Going for a walk, drinking something nice, enjoying your healthy meals that you have here, treating each other very kindly, actually being friends with each other. See when the fault-finding mind comes up, and then just contemplate wisely. Oh yeah, this is a negative thought coming up. Is that leading to more suffering for myself? Is that leading to more suffering to others? Or is that leading to less suffering for myself or less suffering for others? This way we distinguish between the thoughts that are wholesome and the thoughts that are unwholesome. And this can be your major job during your retreat. Not that it's going to be completely still and you go into jhana and this time I'm going to be the awakened one here. No, but it's going to be this. If you manage to see unwholesome states coming up as unwholesome states, they're just going to drop. You don't need any willpower. You don't need any force. As soon as the mind realizes this is leading to more suffering, the thought and the feeling is going to drop. Because this is the great advantage that we have. The mind will always look for happiness and will always try to avoid suffering. So you can use it for your meditation. Just look very clearly. Okay. So it's always so cold in the Dhamma hall, actually. Oh, I hate it here. I hate the vibes in the Dhamma hall. It's just like, okay, how cold is it really? Is it leading to more happiness, or can I just bring a blanket? So if you're cold, bring a blanket. Don't get involved into that. What has to be done on the outside there to make you happier? Sometimes it's just a little thing, or we're restless and it's sort of everything hurts in the body and we don't want to sit, and then don't sit, please. There's nobody forcing you to sit. Never force yourself to sit. Always invite your mind to sit. If the mind doesn't see beauty in it, it's not going to be able to want it. If there's only always this sort of, or that promise in the far future, the paycheck is in the mail. No, it's not. If you sit there and just suffer and is negative, there is no paycheck coming, I guarantee you. There is no paycheck there. The paycheck is going to come if there are enough wholesome mind states for a very long time. Then is when the paychecks are coming, because the mind is just happy where it is. It's just you're going to sit there, and that is completely enough. Oh, breathing in, breathing out. Wow. If the mind can be interested in that, and is as good as the best movie or music or whatever you ever saw, then the meditation is going to take off. There is that foundation of happiness there. The stillness is allowed to come up because the mind is not moving. Or it's moving a little bit still, but it's not looking actively outside through the five senses and through thought to alleviate that suffering, because it's okay with where it is. So that is my advice for your meditation. Be aware of what is going on. See if there's negativity coming up. See if you can enlighten that negativity with some right thoughts. But if it becomes too uncomfortable and you get into trouble before you start treating yourself badly, before you start getting even more negative, getting negative about the negativity coming up or whatnot, and you get into any spirals, always get up, some walking, have a nice cup of tea, grab your book or whatever you brought with you, or your tablet, and get out of there first. Get out of that mind space. And then if there's a little bit more happiness, then you can invite the mind again. Shall we have another look? How much do we really need now? Just in, out. And sometimes when the body relaxes then a bit and you realize, or the mind realizes, this is great, because this is a happiness independent of what is going on out there. This is a happiness that is less and less dependent on on the happiness that is advertised out there through the five senses. When the mind realizes that, it gets a little bit of this taste of that direction, of the happiness the Buddha is talking about. This, it's not conditioned so much anymore. It's getting less and less conditioned by the happy events on the outside. And it's like with the Corvette, as a being in robes, I still had the four requisites. I had enough food, I had enough clothing, I had medicine and shelter. I wasn't cold. I guess most of you had the same still. And all the suffering around it was created as a fantasy in the head. So always what is going to happen tomorrow, what is going to happen to him, to her, next year, if it's going to get better or worse. So all this future stuff in the mind, and we don't have any influence of what is going to happen most of the time. And if you meditate on that, you see often that 99% of these thoughts are completely useless. And their only effect is that to bring you and other people down, steal happiness. They're happiness suckers. And if you want to meditate, you need all the happiness you can get. You need all that happiness and contentment to let go. Because otherwise it's just, you're going to just struggle and you use force, and you're just going to become more and more miserable. And no paycheck is going to come if you suffer more. Just for the sake of suffering, or what? There's no insight in just getting crazy in your own mind. And the mind is still. There is happiness in that. But if the mind can't see that, your meditation is, there is no attractiveness to the meditation. If you watch very closely from an active mind to a mind slowing down, seeing thoughts as thoughts and not something my thoughts, and when they lose the power a little bit, the grip a little bit, there's huge happiness in that already, without being in super deep meditation. Just seeing thoughts as thoughts, and oh yeah, negative thoughts coming up, oh yeah, positive thought coming up. Non-self, that is not you, it's just thoughts coming and going and coming and going. So I hope you can do that here, be as happy as you can during your retreat. And if you can't be happy, be kind to yourself that you can't be happy, because that is not up to you as well. And it has nothing to do with stupidity or anything. If the mind gets into the moods, it just sometimes happens. Just don't add to the suffering then. Have the wisdom not to add to that. And give each other the space for being maybe a little bit moody and a little bit, I don't know, we're all rubbing on each other because we're all different people. And we have our idiosyncrasies and our habits and our faults. Put your effort into that. Having that little bit of more tolerance. See that the other people might struggle in that particular moment. Use some extra kindness. And I was just reminded recently in the office during the coffees. Basically, one of the biggest thing, if not the biggest thing, is the Kalyana Mitta in Buddhism. The friends on the path. They take us along. We're influencing each other. So the more pleasant we make it between each other, the bigger are our chances that happiness is coming up from that feeling of belonging in a community that tries to go in a similar direction. So I offer that to the viewers and to you for your reflection today. I hope you have a beautiful time as long as you stay. And just always remember Ajahn Brahm, that kindness is so important in your own mind. Never start fighting. We're addicts, so if you're suffering too much, do something nice for yourself. Get some of the sense pleasures actually that you still enjoy and indulge yourself. Get into a better mind state, and then you might like to sit down and have a bit of quiet in the hall or whatever. Okay. All the best.